Hi, Armored Pants here, and I have another review for you in the Japanese line. This is the Tier 5 collectible, used to be premium, the Panzer IV Anko SP, and we have a complete guide for you. If you've played the German Panzer IV in Tier 5, the Panzer IV-G, then you'll be familiar with this tank. It's a slight variation on that. As always, we're going to have a look at the tech spec first, and we'll use blitzhanger.com to do that. Now, I like this tank as a collectible because it's better than the Techline tank. For example, it has higher HP, better gun depression, etc. And I think the collectible tanks and premium tanks should be better than the Techline tanks. And that's not always the case. And actually, when we look at the Chi-No-Kai Premium 5 medium tank from the Japanese line, you'll see that that's actually worse than the Chi-No. Anyway, let's go back to this tank. It has 75mm gun, which is very good. That gun has a better reload. It has 7.07 second reload, which is faster than the Techline Panzer IV-G. It has 710 hit points compared to 630 on the Panzer IV-G as well, so therefore it is performing better. The damage, etc., is comparable. It has the same speed, but you'll see here in depression it has 10 degrees of gun depression compared to only 8 on the Panzer IV-G, so therefore it is better, superior in terms of gun depression too, like many Japanese tank. So the gun depression now on this tank is 10 degrees, which allows you for a little bit variation on the gameplay, and is the same then as other Japanese medium tanks from tier 5, 6 and 7. Now, looking at the armor profile here, you will see something unusual. That's the spaced armor, and the spaced armor is, while it's in itself doesn't offer a huge thickness of armor, it does offer something very special, particularly when you are up tiered. If you're facing off against a big gun that's going to fire HE at a medium tank, that spaced armor reduces HE penetration. Just to recap on how HE works in case you're not familiar, HE, high explosive, explodes on impact with the first object it hits. That's why you cannot fire it, for example, through bricks, because it will detonate on the bricks and do no damage. A similar principle at play here. When it hits the spaced armor, it detonates. Therefore, it lessens the impact considerably on the actual body of the tank. If we look at the tracks here, you'll see that they are quite well protected by the spaced armor too. So while I always run 2 repair kits when I can, if you want to, you can choose engine accelerator here on this tank as an option, because your tracks are quite covered on the sides, as you see. So you won't get tracked as often in this tank as you would in the Techline Panzer IV-G. Going back to the spaced armor, the piece of spaced armor on the turret also is good protection from large HE rounds. And that's really its main protection, because from AP rounds they will go through it, of course. It's quite a thin piece of armor, but in HE rounds, and also in heat operates the same way. Somebody fires a heat round at you, the heat round, how it works is it hits the armor, opens up the armor and injects this molten metal into the tank that does considerable damage. If it hits the spaced armor, it injects the metal then, and it will hit the tracks only, so it'll only do limited damage. So just to recap there in different shell types and how the spaced armor will protect you on this. By the way, for those of you playing in the higher tiers, the IS range has spaced armor along its side, which is why if you fired heat rounds at the side of an IS-6, IS-3, IS-5, etc., you'll wonder why it doesn't do any damage, or does hardly any damage, and that's why. So, back to our tank here. As we see, it's pretty much a Panzer IV-G from the Techline, but with some extra bobs and whistles that makes it a better tank. Faster reload, extra HP, and that spaced armor on the sides, which is very valuable. Now, I'm up tiered here. So I'm actually, what I'm going to do here as a medium tank, which I always do on this map, is I go to this spot in between A and B to spot, and somebody pointed out that I always do that on this map, and actually when I think about it, I do. So let's say this is my pants point, the point where Armored Pants goes on this map nearly all the time if I'm in a medium or light tank, and bingo, pants point pays off. Spotted up the enemy, and now it can beat a hasty retreat and bounce a shot there. As you can see, the armor on the front of this tank will bounce some shots for you. It has a pretty good armor profile on the front on. There you see the muzzle velocity in action. This is why I always use supercharge to get that muzzle velocity up to the maximum, so that you can make shots like that. Muzzle velocity, as we've discussed before, is key to this game in my opinion. Other people disagree, they prefer to use different equipment loadout, but I always use supercharge, because muzzle velocity, well, firstly, it allows more accurate shooting because the shell travels faster, but also, as we discussed before, the mathematical formula that dictates whether a shell penetrates or not has velocity as a key component, and velocity is squared in that formula called the F formula. Therefore, having increased shell velocity has an exponential impact, advantageous impact on you being able to penetrate the enemy. But that is just my own opinion, although it is mathematics and I don't really think you can argue mathematics. So here we are, I'm up against an SU-100. This is a big gun, big scary gun, so I'm really just trying to be very careful here. I'm trying to pick my shots, not trying to give him anything, just trying to get into the vulnerable part there. He got me with a round there, but now I know he has a long reload, so I can put in another round and back off. And again, you see this 10 degrees of gun depression. This is really helping me here. If I was in a Panzer IV-G here, I would be able to fire those shots over the wall like that. So this is making a difference for me and helping me out a lot. And there we go, cleared him, quite happy with that. Now, this is what I mean about muzzle velocity and getting the gun, making the gun as accurate as possible. Look at this shot here. Not much to aim at, but the gun is reliable and accurate and allows you to do things like that, popping it into the very vulnerable cupola of that BDR. If you look at the BDR review that we have on channel, you will see that I actually cite that cupola as being a very vulnerable part of what is an otherwise decent heavy tank. Coming up on the back of the Nashorn now, and he's facing off to me, so I need to get into cover, which I do, make him miss. But really, I'm a one shot for him now, so I need to be very careful. Put one more round into him, but I'm going to be really cautious here. I feel there's a mastery badge on this game. I don't want to die. If I survive, I get extra HP for that. So I'm going to be really cautious. There's no need to rush in. It's a 5v2 situation. So my allies are going to come and clear him, and they do. And now I know there's just a Stug left, and I'm confident that I can take on the Stug. So I'm pushing up to see if I can find him. I think he's around C. See if I can find him and see if I can secure that mastery badge. You can see the tank is quite fast, it's quite agile, but when it's at a standstill it is clunky and doesn't really feel so agile. But when it's moving, when it gets moving, it's pretty agile. You will be able to circle a death and brawl with heavies, etc. It is mobile enough for that. And there we go, the mastery badge delivered. But just be aware that if you're starting from a stop start, it takes some time to accelerate. So don't think that you're just going to take off and get away from heavies. It is a slow starter. I think that game was a good demonstration of the tank. Also how to play medium tank. Go spot up, give your ally some targets on the enemy. Keep safe. Try to snipe where possible. Use your muzzle velocity for long range shots. Move around the map, don't stay still. So key lessons from medium tank play, and also how to play this Panzer IV Anko. As I said, it's better than the Techline tank and has a few extras thrown in. It has a good gun, as we saw. It's accurate, reliable. It has average alpha rolls, of course, but it has a decent reload, 7 seconds. As I said, my recommendation is to use supercharge and refined gun, and to use gun rammer to get the reload down. The 75mm gun has decent pen, as you saw there when I was up against the SU-100, but you will need Promo against some tanks when you're up tiered especially. And the spaced armor is very useful and really helps with HE rounds, especially if you're up tiered. KV2 thinks he's going to kill you, and he won't if you're side on, and he'll be surprised why. That 10 degrees to gun depression really helps. It's very useful, and it's +2 versus the Techline. And the extra hit points are really valuable too. 710 versus 630, so an extra 80 hit points, very useful indeed. And it has a faster reload too than the Panzer IV-G, and that can surprise tanks and brawls because they will be expecting you to have that almost 8-second reload and you're down just over 7. And that can really surprise some opponents who are not familiar with this tank. And of course, the key thing is that this tank will be seen less and less because it's a collectible tank. So as the game goes on, old players leave, new players come in, this tank will be seen less and less on the battlefield, and therefore will surprise more and more. Credit coefficient is not great, it's okay in the tank, it's 123%. It's below average for a tier 5, particularly for a collectible or premium tank, but nonetheless it will earn you credits, of course, as a collectible. So overall, it's a good tank. If it comes up again in chests or whatever, I'd recommend you try to get it. Also, I did mention before that the little Japanese voices in it are pretty cool and unusual in the game. So I guess all that remains for me to say is cheers mush, thanks for watching, and pants off.